we're able to reach everyone from across the world. As you are doing that, we're going to speak about our house rules. Here we have certain rules of engagement and rules of procedure. First of all, we need everybody to keep conversation civil. We need everyone to engage as much as they can, and remember that you're in a space with a lot of other people, so you need to keep your conversations very civil, very polite. Questions will be asked in the Q&A box. Use that box to ask your questions during the course of the webinar. Keep your questions concise, short, so that we can get to as many people as possible, and join the conversation on social media with the hashtags 1 million by 2021 and hashtag Meet the Unlimited. We'll also post the hashtag in the chat box, so it's easy for you to copy and use on social media. So we're going to go very quickly to our incredible speakers. We have speakers from media, health and education, and they have the common goal of being young people who have come together and mobilized in their communities, and they're here to tell us what they've done and how you can also duplicate their efforts. So the first speaker is a man who may need no introduction to some of you. His name is Sobel Aziz Ngom. He is the founder and executive director of Social Change Factory, and he's a board member of Generation Unlimited. And Sobel has been an edu entrepreneur. He's from Senegal, and he has been the head of Africa Hub for Changemakers, part of the renowned NGO Ashoka. He's founded a lot of youth engagement platforms, the Social Change Factory for civic leadership, and he's also developed Voix des Jeunes, which is the biggest and most popular TV program dedicated to youth empowerment in Francophone Africa. Sobel, you're speaking to us today around general strategies for activating young people towards civic participation, entrepreneurship, and innovation. Tell us, is it easy to activate young people? Are young people on the continent easily activated? There's a lot of conversations around apathy of young people, having young people participate in civic spaces. What has been your experience, and what are the strategies that you will propose to anybody who's trying to activate young people out there?
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for the creation, and thank you for having me on this conversation. I'm actually and currently based in Dakar, in Senegal, so from the West Coast, and I'm saying hi to everybody in the call. It's not really hard to activate young people, but it's hard to find the right way to activate them. And I think this is a very regular challenge that organizations have when they are talking about we need to activate young people. What I always say is that the best way to get the best contribution from young people is to partnering with them, not to trying to activate them. I think according to their places or their needs, they have already ideas about solutions that could work for them, and they need support to do them and to implement them. And very often that conversation between young people and institutions, it can be local institution, national, or even international institution, that conversation, it's not necessarily productive in the way that young people are still seen as beneficiaries on program and not contributor or partners. And it takes time and work to raise your voice for those institutions can deal with you as partner and listen to your idea and value your contribution. And that COVID-19 situation has been a very interesting way to see how, in the same time, it's created operational needs where young people are called to take actions, such as mask distribution, food distribution, spreading the right information, fight against the fake news. Young people are the best people on the earth to do that because they are the one using the most the social media, and they are on WhatsApp. In my country, for example, there is 8 million people on WhatsApp out of a population of 15 million people. So more than the half of the population. So it's strongly a good channel to inform and to create a momentum for something. And if we get to convince the young people and collaborate with them, for them to become vehicles that bring those information that knowledge, that and those orientation and prevention measure to take against COVID, and we pass by them to touch the community, we will reach a larger number of persons that is reached by the formal media that we know. And at the same time, that COVID situation creates some strategic opportunity. In few African countries that I know, I saw that the engagement of young people has really raised when the COVID-19 situation comes. Why? I think because they are a victim of that situation. Most of young people are not in school. A good number of them has lost their jobs or don't have any security. And it's a way to tell them that truly young people need to do more than expecting from authorities to serve them. They really need to take some leadership. And that situation really proved that. And we can show that leadership everywhere. I know here a youth association of tailors, they do 1,000 of masks that they offer to the Ministry of Health. You know, a group called Dan COVID, it's a coalition of 100 volunteers from the private sectors, from the digital companies that come together and build a national digital response to COVID-19. They included the private sector, they included the public's governance, and most of the people leading that things are under 35. And this is the official response, the digital response to COVID-19 that's happening right now in my country. That's just a way to transform the narrative and the perception that the society has on young people. Because I think this is the first limit. If the person you are going to talk to don't see you as someone that can bring something on the table, but see you just as someone that needs help, the discussion won't be fair enough for you to get the best for implementing what you need. And that's an opportunity, I think, this crisis for young people to better structure themselves and to talk more loudly with more unicity. And this is a time for coming together. And we have seen that in all kinds of other sectors. To fight for the crisis, they need to come together and to be stronger. And I think this is the same challenge that young people have right now. And a question that I think needs to be asked really, it's also how can we as young people can help to fix our issues.
Hi, Sobel.
Yes? Okay, I will go ahead. So I was saying another question that is important on how can young people be engaged right now is to support our children. Because the COVID has strong consequences on children, and they are also out of education. Some of them are having trouble with accessing the good food and all those issues. And I think that young people can also play a role supporting better the children with being volunteer to help them to do their homework, being volunteers to distribute food, being volunteer to support maybe some activities outdoors that are acceptable by the situation in the country, but give some time for this group of vulnerable people because, as we said in French, on est dans le même panier, which means I think we are in the same bucket and we need to support each other. So the other thing that I want to give as an example is that volunteering campaign that we have launched in partnership with other organizations in Senegal to really say, okay, we want to reach the highest number of young people for them to get the right information every day about the situation and the right tools and inspiration for them to act in their community. So we developed that group of more than 20 members from various organizations. And every day, since 2 months, every morning, we design a visual with the situation of the country, the new rules, the new key updates. We make a translation in 4 languages, 4 local languages, and sorry, I don't have the English for that word. Video with the sign language for people with auditive disabilities. And we do that every day. And that has shown me how it could be powerful to put people together to produce the right content and to have them be regular about that. And then we have 3,000 volunteers that are spreading every message that we build in WhatsApp group, in their community, in their own language. So it has shown some success. We have reached more than 500,000 people, yet we have great feedback from people receiving our information, and we are building now partnership with classic media for them to use that rich content that we develop every day to spread also in media. So I think, you know, this kind of time are also opportunities to change the statu quo of the top-down solution and bring a new perspective of a bottom-up, of a co-creation that are needed right now. And I think there is no choice for our government because the needs in the side of young people is too high if you compare to the resources allocated to take care of those needs. So we need to integrate more young people to take part of the solution. So that was my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sobel. It's so nice to hear from a young person that has such a wealth of knowledge. I think it's so exciting that you've been able to reach so many young people. And I think that the advice that you have given the young people that are in attendance is so rich. And sorry, is that Amanda? Sorry, we have a bit of connectivity issues. You know how it goes. But thank you so much. Since we don't have that much time, I'm going to move on to Jessica Timms, who is a media practitioner in South Africa. As Amanda had already, I see some nice comments for you, Sobel, in the chat box. But yes, as Amanda had already introduced, and so the topic that Jessica is going to be talking about is how to successfully mobilize local influencers to advocate and raise awareness on COVID-19. I know that you have a wealth of experience also working with young people. And as we spoke before, I know that you've also contacted other of your networks to kind of get a lot of information to kind of help drive this conversation. And so Jessica, over to you. Jessica,
all right.
do we still have you?
Just a little check. Can everyone hear me and see me? Sorry, I'm just having a bit of a technical difficulty there. All right, there we go. So greetings to everybody across the African continent. I'm so thrilled to have been invited to this conversation. To Sobel, listening to you was, wow, that was really refreshing. I think because you were mentioning how the bottom-up approach is actually really important right now, especially at a time where, you know, it's difficult to even say what young people have, but to just hear you speaking about what can be done with little, I think was really refreshing to me. So thank you so much. And I think being the speaker who comes after you is a little bit intimidating, but it's okay. So yeah, I think what qualifies me, as Lisa has mentioned, to be part of this conversation is the fact that over the past few years, in different ways, I've worked with young people in what South Africa would call township areas, which are previously disadvantaged areas where a lot of historically disadvantaged people will live, and a vast majority of South Africans live in these spaces. So my work has been there, and also just on our national broadcaster. So I've been working as a presenter and also as a producer in different spaces to bring young people to conversate about change and about how they can make a difference in their society as well. I've also worked with corporates and brands in order to create a mutual benefit for both young people and for those brands to come together, and the brands impact young people's lives in terms of resources, etc. The young people also get a space where they can speak to issues that are affecting them. So that's, I guess, a bit of my background. I speak from the South African experience in the sense that we've been in a heavy lockdown for the past 2 months. So it's been very difficult to create any mobilization of any kind on our side, because we've had young people who have even been attacked by the police in very harsh ways for simple things like walking in the street. We commend our police and our army forces for doing a great job in handling the lockdown, but it's created a sense of fear in terms of movement. So it's been very difficult in our country to mobilize young people in the way that we would have wanted to. One of the biggest hampering factors to that is digital online platforms create a wonderful way for young people to stay in touch with each other, particularly WhatsApp, particularly Facebook, Instagram, and all those platforms. But there are a lot of young people whose last concern right now is being online or data. Right now, it's food, having something to eat, being in a space where you can feel the fear of your parents, you can feel the fear of your grandparents or your caretakers in terms of their ability to provide. And in our nation, there's a heavy anxiousness and a numbness and a feeling of, I hope this is a word, lethargy, or just feeling lethargic and numb at the moment, because we face wide-ranging issues, and this is now the context where young people are sitting, and now we're saying to them, we need you to mobilize. There's, as Sobel has mentioned, the feeling of, I don't know whether I'm going to finish my academic year this year. I don't know where my next economic opportunity might come from. I'm afraid of interacting with others because I don't know if I have the virus or somebody else has the virus and could pass it to me. This is now the context that a 2020 young person has to now think for themselves and now think for others. And this is why I believe that any campaign or project that wants to mobilize and rally young people needs to a certain extent, not entirely. I'm not saying young people are ineffective or they're just like, sitting ducks or anything. No, I'm just saying that right now there's a certain tone sensitivity that we need to have when rallying young people, either as individuals or through their bigger youth organizations within communities. We need to be tone sensitive to what the needs are in communities right now and what they're facing. And when we're tone sensitive, we can thereby, when we speak the right language to young people, saying, we know what we're asking from you is tough, but if we don't rise, if we don't wake up from this numbness that we're feeling, where is our continent going to go? Where's our country going to go? It's so much bigger. Yes, as individuals, we're all facing our own issues, as I mentioned earlier, but now is the time that when we lift ourselves up, we can also lift each other up. And when we work together as communities and as big groups of young people, it also takes our minds off of the burdens that we've been feeling for so long and just the nitty-gritties that keep us stuck in isolation and in fear. So this conversation has challenged me a lot. And some of the solutions that I'm going to bring forward, I have been in contact, as Lisa said, with a number of youth organizations in South Africa. Some of them are well-resourced. They are getting national and local funding. Others are working from the grassroots barely have anything, and they're still making a great impact in society. So with that in mind, who would a young influencer be? A young influencer does not necessarily have to be a celebrity figure in any way. It's a young person who has a broad spread of reach or sphere of influence in their city, their rural area, their community, and even in the broader landscape of their country. They have a longing to see their fellow citizens and youths overcome obstacles and live fulfilling and long lives. They are both the charming, loud extroverts, and they're also the more focused, deep thinking introverts. So they have many different personality types. They are also young people who have led before in big capacities, and those who are beginners and who just want to lend a helping hand. And I repeat again, they don't have to be these big overarching celebrities with 50,000 followers, but if campaigns are put together well, it might attract that kind of influence at the same time. So really, it's a broad scope of what is a young influencer. And what does it mean? So the question that was posed to me was, how do we mobilize young local influencers to create awareness during COVID-19, right? And obviously to be of impact in their sphere of influence. I think that we need to think bigger than that, because creating awareness around COVID-19 means, okay, tell everybody to wear a mask, to use hand sanitizer, to social distance where possible, and to stop spreading fake news, myths and misconceptions, etc. I am challenging everybody that if you're going to think of a project, think a bit broader, because COVID-19 is more than just the protocols that we need to follow. It's also about keeping the spirits of young people and communities alive right now, reminding them that being distant does not mean disconnected. As I said, it's also about making sure that misconceptions, myths that Black or the African continent can't get COVID-19, making sure that where we are in our communities, we make sure that we don't spread that kind of information. And young leaders, young influencers can definitely be the voices for this. It's about staying in touch with the latest information from governments regarding guidelines and protocols. It's also about helping communities to get through the psychological, the physical, and the spiritual impact of isolation and fear. So to me, when we're thinking of raising awareness around COVID-19, it cannot just be about wear a mask, sanitize your hands, social distance. Those things are important, but our response needs to be a lot broader than that. And I think that when we're raising awareness around COVID-19, when we're raising awareness around COVID-19, that it's important to just think bigger and broader when we're doing so. So where do we begin to mobilize young local influencers? The first thing, and when I say this, I'm not just speaking to the African Union and Generation Unlimited. I know that they have a lot of capacity to create big campaigns and projects. To anyone who's watching and wants to do something at a big level scale that might just involve corporate sponsorship or going a little bigger than that, or using whatever the community has to do this. The first thing I would say is assess the needs and the state of the community. Do the communities and the individuals have a great understanding of what the pandemic requires of us? In that community space, city, rural area, wherever it is there access to water and sanitation? What is the state of hunger and lack? Because if people are hungry, it's very difficult to get them to social distance or to follow any protocols of any kind. Hunger and lack is the biggest threat to whatever campaign anybody tries to run. And it's important to make sure that we understand where are our communities in terms of that when we're doing our assessment. As for senior citizens and the most vulnerable, are they taken care of? Are they able to continue with their lives? And are young people still able to learn and to play and to dream and to hope for life after this? So the second thing I would say would be, after you've assessed the needs in your community, start with a call to action. So a call to action, which is to mobilize everybody. If you're going to do it on social media, via WhatsApp, if you're going to socially distance in that manner, go from door to door, then The two, I would put them into two categories, but you can also lump them together, which is your call to action is to individuals, and it's also to get buy-in from local young organizations as well. And if the African Union and Generation Unlimited expect to light a flame across the continent and to attract local influences, then the call to action must be tone sensitive and understand the current challenges of both individual young people and of youth organizations. The third one I would say is, if you're going to rally lots of people together, all the organizations I spoke to in my country spoke a lot about resources. So young people and youth organizations are definitely attracted by campaigns and projects that are well-led, well-resourced, and also that give them a match with which to light that flame across the country. If possible, I know that companies right now are, if you're going to approach one and you have a great pitch to put together, it's difficult because companies are restructuring their budgets. People are now putting more emphasis into making masks and PPE and keeping their employees than they are about inspiring young people to stay alive and also to mobilize them in big numbers to do some great work in the community. So, but there are those who can, and it's always important to do as much as you can and knock on as many doors as possible. So the first thing would be create a campaign that has a strong mission and a relatable brand identity. When you do that, it becomes much easier for bigger level influencers and celebrities to maybe jump on board in terms of what you're doing, and corporates as well. It also attracts young people to something that it's not a fly by night. It was well thought out, it's greatly put together, and we relate to the mission and the message that it's been given. So yeah, I would say that. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you have leaders who are deploying other leaders. We can't congregate in big numbers, but what we can do is have a core management and then have young people who are nominated within the communities to deal with 10 or 5 people that they visit on a regular basis, check in terms of those needs assessments for the community. And when the bigger mission or project comes, you've now created a base that you can work with. I have noted strongly, and I know I'm pressed for time and I'm going to try and wrap this up as quick as I can. Data is like air, and it helps to assist everything that we do as young people. This is why I said, you know, coming together with corporate sponsorship helps in this regard, because if you can attract a big data provider to say, let's give data vouchers to young people who are proving in a measurable way that they're doing something within their community, or the resource that the campaign or the project gives is, here is data for you to do what you're doing and to access all these conversations that young people are having across the continent. It really helps a lot. And it shows the young person that I'm not just doing this myself. I'm not out here on my own. You know, there's something for me to work with. And yeah, data is a big one. And I know it's something that most of our young people struggle with a lot. If young people have
data,
there's barely a limit to what we can achieve. So yeah.
Sorry to cut you, Jessica.
Yes.
Hi, Jessica.
Yes. Hello? Hello?
Maybe let me come in. This is Lisa.
Sorry to cut you, Jessica. Sorry to cut you, but just to tell you to just wrap up because we're kind of running out of time.
Sure. Sorry about that. Yeah, I would say data is important, and create informative toolkits that maybe have a high res or a low res video that might be able to be shared with family and friends. Also, these campaigns that we create must create a sense of belonging and leadership amongst young people. So when you do these kind of things, I think that it really helps to attract local young influencers. And I really wish that we had more time to go into the rest of the points that I have, but maybe in the question and answer, I'll be able to tackle more of those. So definitely this is the time for young people across the continent to come together and use our minds as much as we can and attract whatever partnerships that we possibly can to rally young people in communities and run effective and successful campaigns and projects.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And thank you to everyone for your patience. I'm having some network challenges here. Thank you so much to my co-host, Lisa, for stepping in. Jessica is speaking to us around working together as communities. And I particularly love what you said about not necessarily needing the greatest influencers to be on your side from the get-go. But if you have a good enough cause, a common vision, and enough drive, you can get them on board when you start something. And the conversation around data is one that is right there in our faces, but we don't usually pay attention to it as much. And it's a huge conversation. And at this point, I'm going to pivot to our third speaker, Rihanna. Rihanna is speaking to us today about mobilizing young people at community level through the challenges of social distancing and the digital divide, and galvanizing local action in the context of COVID-19. And this relates very closely to the conversation around data and what about people who don't necessarily have access to internet. This is what we get all the time. So Rihanna is not only a public health professional, she's also a medical doctor and she's a management consultant. She's been working in health systems strengthening and innovation, and she's currently the engagement manager at Solina Center for International Development and Research in Nigeria. And Rihanna is also one of the young people who spearheaded, or who is spearheading a great campaign we see across social media and on traditional media called Take Responsibility, which is young people working to advance the CDC's efforts. So this is a group of young people who are doing tangible work on the ground to create awareness and safety around the COVID-19. So Rihanna, speak to us a little bit around where Jessica left off around data. What are some of the challenges that you have faced, and what is it like taking ownership in your own space and getting others to take ownership as well?
Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sobel and Jessica, for leading with all of my cues. And I'm just going to write off all of the things that you guys have said. Amanda, to answer your question, I think that data is always something that is powerful and something that really helps significantly in strategy and iterating as you need to. The work that we've been doing in supporting the National Center for Disease Control in Nigeria. I mean, before I begin, I'll just introduce or say where I'm from. I'm currently speaking from Abuja in Nigeria. Sorry, just to confirm, can everyone hear me? All right. Thanks, Jessica. Data is important because it helps us to understand what's working and, focus on those and figure out what's not really working and tweak as necessary. But more importantly, it's something that is always lacking as well, because most times we are not working within systems to help us generate the data we need to work. So most times we're working blindly, or we're not really focusing on the right areas. I mean, before I go into the presentation, I'll just use an example. So there's this general misconception that to get to the grassroots and to get to communities, you just need to go on radio, or you just need to put it on social media, and that's going to get in health and in development. In West Africa and in Nigeria, you find that most people actually don't get their information from radio, for example. Most people don't really get an influence from platforms that are online. I mean, when I say most people, I'm talking about the people that are not in the 1% or in the 5%. I'm talking about the people at the grassroots, the people that really need this information, that really need the intensified efforts that we need to put in place. So for us, this was part of the burning issues. Could you please move to the next slide, Charles? So yeah, with risk communication in Nigeria's response was something that was a problem at the outset of the pandemic in Nigeria. This really became an issue in Nigeria in March when the first case was identified. And from our perspective, we knew that risk communication was really the big piece that needed to be fixed. We know that preventive measures needed to be in place, and people need to have the information that they require to be able to arm themselves, to be able to act. You know, people need information and that power to act or feel like they can actually do something to prevent the spread of the virus in their own ways. Now, at the beginning in Nigeria, there were challenges with an overwhelmed health system that wasn't really ready to handle all of the different challenges that COVID posed. There was issues with low risk perception. So a lot of people either didn't believe it or didn't even understand what it was, where really there were really no contextualized messages on what really COVID is and what does it mean for a Black man. What does social distancing mean if I live in a slum? What is hand washing if I don't have water? What is, you know, so many messages that were not contextualized. They were in English, they were not relatable, and they weren't really practical for our settings. And there was also really minimal grassroots involvement. There was just a few tweets here, a few news broadcasts, and, you know, it was a big problem. Can we take it to the next slide, please? And recognizing this problem, we decided, and we here are just a group of enthusiastic young professionals, really multidisciplinary, range from people that work in global health, some of us working in policy and advocacy, in communications, academia, all Nigerians, but, you know, scattered around the world. And we thought that, and this was something that really started informally by talking to each other and saying, okay, there's a problem and we're concerned, what can we do? And it was clear that there wasn't a lot of voices amplifying the work that the NCDC was doing. And they had a campaign in place, which was called the Take Responsibility, but there wasn't much that was being done with that or to that. And so we decided to help drive that or amplify that, leveraging our personal and professional networks. Personal networks being your friends, your family, your direct, you know, social media, and also your professional networks, your different workplaces on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and also the people and the stakeholders that you work with on a day-to-day basis, who are in the same space, in the same academia or global health, as in is really a drive that the NCDC drive the COVID-19 messaging and risk perception messages. So on the next slide, I'll show you some of the ways that we have helped to drive this forward. So develop content or messages that we're going to really help fill the vacuum. First, we try to identify what is critical at every time as the virus spread and the different stages progressed. We found that there were different pieces of information that were relevant. So at different times, we have had to do wide-ranging things from general, okay, what is a case definition versus who can you call? What are the symptoms that you should be worried about? What does it mean to stay at home? How can I do that? Why should I even do that in the first place? Also mental health, because this whole crisis, it's something that hasn't happened to most of us before, and it's very new and has taken a toll on lots of us. And I'll ride on what Jessica said about the feeling of helplessness, the feeling of not knowing, that lethargy. For us, it was understanding that, well, this is happening to us right now, but what can we do and how can we help? And, you know, that in itself just gives us more energy to feel like we're actually doing something, especially with the fact that a lot of us, for instance, I work in health, and in health system strengthening. And it just seemed like with COVID, everything that we had worked for and everything that we had been striving to build over the years didn't really matter anymore. And all that mattered was COVID and trying to get through this crisis. So it was a huge part of what drove us to do this, and how we continue to identify messages. And it was really fast. It was a lot of people coming together, volunteering ideas, time, resources, and the different technical expertise to, help develop these messages. And in crafting those, we used some creative methods. There were people that, helped in designing infographics, taking online pledges that help, deliver the messages in more creative ways, doing video animations, audio scripts, and circulating those around as required. Now, in the dissemination bit of this, there were different methods. It was clear that social media was a low-hanging fruit, of course. So that was our first point, of course, specifically WhatsApp stories, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We saturated all of those in the first 1 week with different messages, and we continue to do that as they arise. But also we knew that that was not enough. Yes, we were getting good feedback. The circle of communication was complete. You would get your message coming back to you the next day or the same day, and people are forwarding you the same messages. And that was great, but it was clear that there needed to be more that we would do at the grassroots level. And so we thought about different ways that we could do this. And one of those ways was to, through our work, for instance, I said I work in health system strengthening in northern Nigeria. It's getting the government stakeholders, the health workers that we know, the community resource groups, just sharing this information with them and having them become ambassadors to be able to also push these messages forward. There was also this is Jessica, an influencer for, say, a young person in Lagos or a young person in an urban area might be a celebrity, or might be someone who is, a star on media, on social media, and we those kind of work. And Azzy had the platform that we could leverage to speak and talk about the COVID-19 risk perception messages. There were also the religious of people at the grassroots. There was role modeling and having them wear masks and having them make messages, having them speak to their people in the different town hall meetings, and just working with the people that just the network that we had accumulated over the years in our different areas of expertise to amplify these messages both online and offline. There were also radio talk shows, of course, because there is a demographic that listens to radio, but we didn't limit it to the popular FM radio stations that we see in the urban areas, but also went down to think of community radio, because we have rural community radio that isn't something that, say, I could get in my house from here, but it's something that's really limited to smaller villages and the towns in the inner communities. So we also try to share these messages in those places. I also like to highlight that some of our colleagues volunteered their time and their expertise to actually go on ground to work with the NCDC. And this was something that was quite dicey at the time, because we all have our day jobs and we all have all of these other interests, and we're also grappling with the changes that the pandemic came with, right? But we still had people who went to support in person, physically, and provided that collaboration that was required, because it wasn't enough for us to just do this separately. We were not trying to duplicate, we were trying to amplify what was already existing, while also collaborating with other partners. So we collaborated with different people and their personal organizations or their different foundations. Asido Foundation helped with mental health, Code helped with the community grassroots resource persons and volunteers that helped to disseminate messages by word of mouth at the community level. We worked with the corona management systems that helped with the online pledges and the blurbs that went out and helped to amplify what people
Hi,
needed to
Rihanna.
obtain that commitment.
Hi, Rihanna.
Yes,
Hi,
Amanda.
Rihanna. Really sorry to interrupt again, but just time. I'm just giving you a warning.
Yes, great. I was actually about to wrap up. So in the next few slides, I'm just going to show a few of the things that we had worked on, just examples that show how we help develop a directory of numbers that people could call, and that one we translated messages different to 10 language and others, so people are English asymptomatic, and that one really went wild, like wildfire, because we had different languages, we had the mental health ones, we had the celebrity involvement, and all of it really came round. And we have been looking at data to see what is really getting the best reaches, and we know that, sorry, I got cut off for a second there. So yeah, this is really what we have done, and we hope to continue learning more and collaborating with everyone on this. Thank you.
Hi, Rihanna. Did we lose you?
Hi, Amanda, for a minute there, but I returned.
Thank you very much. Please, can you let me know if you can hear me?
Sorry, Amanda, I didn't hear what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. No, I was just checking if we lost you. Thank you very much for that. I think that was such a great journey. You took us through the journey that went into bringing together these people. And I can see people in the comment section asking how they can actually join the Take Responsibility campaign, which is what we love to see. I think it was really important when you spoke about trying to find the context of local communities and saying, where can we reach them? And it's not just on international radio or national radio, but what are their own streams of communication? But also something else that was really striking to me was how Take Responsibility is very multi-sectoral. So it's young people from different walks of life who live in different areas, which bring together a diversity of ideas. I think that's really, really great. I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Lisa. Lisa is going to be taking us through the session that I'm sure many people have been waiting for, which is the Q&A. We have a lot of questions already in the Q&A box, and people have questions targeted to some of you specifically, but generally. So Lisa will take us through the questions and have the panelists answer them. Lisa?
Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you, Sobel, Jessica, Rehana. That was really amazing. And we can tell, as Amanda has said, from all the questions that have come through. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great. So I think I'll start off with Sobel. So we have a comment and a question by Luanda. And her comment is, thank you for such a rich and concrete intervention. What do you think some of the key opportunities for youth and youth organizations are post-COVID? So I'll just give you 3 questions and then you can answer. I hope that sounds okay. A second question is by Ashley. And the question is, how would you go about addressing the government's insufficient support to the most vulnerable, specifically the homeless? And from another question, just kind of merging it together, and also the most vulnerable and disadvantaged. Is this something that should be addressed publicly? And one more would be from Temba, and they're asking, how do we, as the youth, instill a mentality, not ourselves, of having strong influence in the mobilization of Africa in the midst of decades of oppression from African leaders who neglect the youth ideas? Basically, how do we deal with the pre-existing ideas that we are never listened to when trying to reach out to the masses? So Val, so over to you. I hope
I
that was
won't pretend, Lisa, that I got everything that you just said right now, but I think that I have an idea of it. But if you can please send the questions to me so that I can read them, it would be helpful. So I will start by the first one that I got myself from Luanda. So thank you for your comment. So for me, the opportunities post-COVID for young people and organization to raise up. I will start with youth organization. I think the COVID crisis, as I said, has reviewed the way that stakeholders do partnership. I myself, leading a youth-led organization, have been involved in kind of conversation that I never necessarily been before with government, with private sector, and with non-profit. And I see how when there is something there that there is no necessarily predefined answers, then everything is come back at the same level. And this is where young people can raise their voice and their hands, because there is an attention to innovation and to solutions. And I think this is what's happening right now. And that momentum has to be structured for it not to be loose just after COVID. Just young people can take back their role as beneficiaries, same way that it is for elections, where young people are the heart of elections, and right after election, you don't hear anymore. I think the challenge for us and the opportunity at the same time is to be better structures. And how can we do that? We can do that by sectors. We can, as young leaders of organization, identify who are the key players of that industry or that sectors, and not say those are concurrent. Honestly, there is no place for concurrency when it's about development. And I really think that we are fighting for very small pieces of the cake, but we can have a bigger part of the cake if we come together. And I think this is the challenge. Find the right partner, find a common message and voice, and make that your different strong partner can come together in a coalition or in a consortium, and you decide to put your eggs in the same bucket and say, okay, so for the next year, we're gonna try this working together and see where it brings us. And I'm sure that the level of attention that you will raise will grow. The level of interest from the decision maker will grow, because you are changing what we call in French, le rapport de force. So you growing as a voice, and you cannot not be heard. And I will conclude by an example that I give often. When the taxi driver decide to go on strike, all the society is disturbed, because they are organized, and because when one said something, the other follows. We don't have that commitment within young people. And what is needed is structuration, not necessarily a national big one structuration, but structuration according to our industries, our sectors, and our region. So that was for the first questions. Lisa, I don't have received the other one, but from what I kept from what you say, there is how can we address the government insufficient support? I think through advocacy, but also I think that we do address constantly the insufficient work of our government. But I think our voice is not necessarily valued, because the perception is we are only the one that goes on strike, young people are the one complaining, young people are the one we need to help. I think the best way to address their insufficient, it's to be also able to prove that there is alternative that could do better. And this is something that where we can engage concretely. I think it's also important to maintain and to advocate for our right and for our government do what they have to do. But at the same time, parallelly, I think we need also to try to organize ourselves in different ways for us to have the capacity to fix some of our problems. And the last one from Tambu, I think, was about the mentality to having a strong influence. And I think I talked about it. I think there is a question of numbers that is important in our democratic countries. And the more we are viewing and saying the same thing, the most we're gonna be heard. And it's a combination, as Jessica said, it doesn't have to be big. The example that Rihanna mentioned in her hospital, this is where change starts, where you live with the people you know that you can trust first, and then you grow it up small. But I know we are ambitious and we want to change Africa. Changing Africa means change our communities. If we change each our communities, then we change Africa. And young people can play a strong role on that. I will end with this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sobel. And sorry if I wasn't so clear, but something that I've taken that's really important is the fact that also our response has to be structured. And as young people, the view is from the older generation is that we're pretty reckless. So we do have to prove that we can actually make a change. And as you said, just partner with somebody that has the same mindset as you, and then start small, just putting everything that you said together, and just build the momentum, and you'll be able to kind of make a change. So I hope that answered your questions. So next I'll go to Jessica. Jessica, I sent you, so I hope you received the questions, but the first one was by Adarsh. And what Adarsh is asking is, how can I revive the economy of my community and solve the issue of hunger? So that would be one. And the second would be, how do you drive engagement and mobilization without a massive following? So I'm just going to do 2 questions for now. And if we have time, then we'll do more. So Jessica, over to you.
Sorry, Lisa, can you please repeat the second question for me?
Yes. How do you drive engagement?
Oh, there we go.
And mobilization without a massive following?
Shoot, okay. Can I tackle the second question first?
Sure.
Sure, okay. How do you drive engagement and mobilization without a massive following? I think Rehana and Sobel have spoken to this, that, if you have 5 friends, your 5 friends have 5 friends, and their 5 friends have 5 friends. So I think it boils down to a fear sometimes. I mean, you see, I don't know, who can I use as an example? Who's a big African superstar? Davido. Let's say you see him, he gets on something, everybody responds, everybody's part of it. You have this idea that's sitting in you, and you're like, I'm not gonna tell anybody because who's gonna follow me? I have 50 followers on Instagram or Facebook. Those 50 people that you have, for example, I spoke to a group called Pagamani Young Minds yesterday. They're not the biggest organization, but what they do is really well run. They needed extra hands to help with the campaign that they were doing to distribute food to their community in Freedom Park. They sent out a thing on their Facebook page, and I think within a couple of days, 42 young people responded. They responded because right now in this time, they didn't want to sit in their houses and think about all their issues. They needed something to keep them busy while the schools were trying to sort out what they were doing. And what they did was they assigned each young person within their personality type almost to do different roles and responsibilities, but also done within a socially distant manner to distribute food and to check up on young people in terms of how their state of education is going. It was done so well that group also collected all of the data. They registered everybody's names, and they've created a strong base that they can work with, right? So I mean, that's a smaller organization, just put a thing on Facebook, all their friends told their friends, and 42 people came through. So I hope that helps you understand that you don't need to have a massive following. The answer to the other question, did I lose? Okay, the other question was, how do I change the economy of my community, especially to address hunger? This one is a very tough one. And what I would do here is, if there are any NGOs or nonprofits or religious communities, I know in my country, they've only opened up churches now. If you can reach out to them to alert them of the need in your community, it might also help you to fill the loopholes that you might not be able to achieve. Also, there's a lot of celebrities who are trying to look good right now with their foundations. And I mean that with no offense. If I found Twitter to be a very good tool to alert them and say to them, hi, my community X is dealing with this problem. Can you please come with your foundation to assist? Some of these foundations that these people are running are going to different communities every single day. I speak from the South African experience. I don't know with the country that you're dealing with, but that's another way to do it. And also, Ahmed, this is a tough one. And I'm hoping that as the regulations begin to ease, we might begin to have more conversations again about how we can uplift the economy of our communities. My dream is that townships, rural areas create economies within themselves and that use the skills and the tools that they have within them to be their own cities and their own hubs. So that one is a tough one. Maybe Sobel and Rehana can also just add to that question, but I'm hoping that what I've said might just spark an idea in someone.
Great. Thank you so much. That was very powerful, especially the fact that you're saying that you don't really need a big following. When you said you have 5 friends that have 5 friends, like, it's true. So all you need to do is just connect, use your networks, because a lot of us have broader networks than we even imagine. And also in terms of when it comes to the food security or helping your fellow community get access to food and those kind of things, reaching out to religious leaders, traditional leaders, the celebrities who are trying to, you know, ensure that they also help their communities. Volunteerism comes in at this point. So thanks so much, Jessica. That was really informative. I hope that helped the people who asked the questions. So, and also, after Rehana answers her questions, Sobel and Jessica, you can also fill in if you feel like there's something else you'd like to add. So over to Rehana now. I sent you your questions. I hope you received them. So the first one is, what are the practical ways for providing reliable information about COVID-19 to people in rural communities with respect to their cultural norms? I know you spoke a little bit about that, but we have, sorry, I didn't get your name, a participant that wants to know. Rehana, can you hear me?
Yes, Lisa, I heard you.
Great. Did you get the messages as well? Did you get the questions?
There was one question, right? Was there a second one?
There are 2. The second is, in many aspects or fronts, from food security to health, youth have been innovative, but due to systematic, both social and political frustrations, most young people have chosen to sell their innovations to Western Asian countries. What structures would you mention that that young people can contribute after COVID-19?
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. So for the first question on practical ways of sharing information, I think that, as everyone has said, the easiest way of doing this is by sharing with your loved ones, your family, your friends, and trying to do the, hoping that by word of mouth it will actually spread, and it does spread, especially when you give credit for mail and it's timely, sensitive, and out, right? So work that we've been doing, when we have people talking about social distancing or alcohol sanitizer, you would find that there are a lot of things that we don't consider when we're bringing out these messages. So we had people raise that, I'm a Muslim, I can't use alcohol-based sanitizers, I don't drink alcohol. And we're saying that, well, this isn't drinking, this is you rubbing it, you're not eating it. But these are concerns that people have. So when we're talking about masks, how do you wear a mask in 40-degree weather? How do you, and there have been different creative ways where you can say, okay, you don't have to wear a mask that is thick. You just need to wear, maybe you can use your scarf or your veil, or at least some breathable material. We have people that already wear veils and saris. You can just use that to cover your nose. We have talking about social distancing and how in overcrowded spaces, and in those areas we can say, okay, if you have to social distance as a group, in a very small group, but not necessarily as individuals, because that isn't really practical. So it's really thinking about what is your user's pain point. You can't tell me to stay at home throughout if I really need to step out, right? So you need to be thinking about the person's context, what are the person's concerns, what are the rumors out there, what are the cultural norms. And I wouldn't be able to speak to a general African cultural norm, because Northern Nigeria, for example, is different from Southern Nigeria, and everything needs to be contextualized to fit those people, which is why it's really important to carry along the religious and traditional leaders, because they understand their people, they understand the constraints that they have, and they know how they can reach those people even where we're not able to. So co-creating with those people and having them be the advocates is always something that works. The second question was about youth innovation and frustration, and finding that you end up doing what you plan to do outside Africa, and because of the frustration and the fact that they don't take us youth seriously. I think that definitely that ceiling is there, where they really don't expect, or there's this general perception that youth are really just out there to benefit themselves, or aren't so serious about, are really just there for the clout or things like that. And I think that's something that we have had to work to kind of break as well, which is really understanding that I'm not doing this for my personal interest. There isn't any special gain from it other than the fact that I'm helping my community and I'm helping to amplify this, and I feel like I have some voice to be able to do that. So I think that it would really be making your intentions pretty clear and being very focused on what you're trying to do, and making sure that that doesn't get diluted and derailed. So that strong sense of purpose and that determination to get, if you know your why, and I always say this, if you know your why and why you're doing this, you can constantly realign even when the thing gets really frustrating, which it will always do because innovation and starting from scratch or starting something new is a very painful process. And if you find that you're getting easily derailed, you might need to step back and rethink your whys. So I would say that beyond, being pressing forward and being determined, you will also need to kind of partner well people that share that same purpose and that are steered in the same direction as you to work with. And these people can range from your peers to people in government or in NGOs and foundations, as Jessica mentioned, that have the same purpose. And I guess there's a lot of discernment, and there is so much more to be unpacked on that particular area or aspect of trying to scale or trying to start up something in volunteer work. I hope that answers your question.
I hope so too, but that was very informative. Thank you so much, Rihanna. To the first question, you're right that context is very important. And as you said, and also Jessica said and Subhasa said, you need to make sure that you understand the community needs. And so leveraging and co-creating with community leaders and religious leaders in the different communities can help you figure out exactly how to relay reliable information. And also what you said about knowing your why, that's very important, because as you've said, it's very frustrating if you're starting from the bottom. And then if somebody from the West comes and gives you a better offer, then you might think short term that it will be beneficial for you when you're neglecting your community somehow, So thank you so much, you guys. This was amazing. I'm going to give you guys 1 minute each to have your closing remarks before we close. So, Val, over to you for your 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Not much to say, just I just wanted to tell everybody, every young people listening that conversation, that and to remind them that the biggest conquests in the history of the world have been made by young people under 25. I can name Alexander the Great. I can name Napoleon in France. I can name Kankan Moussa in the Mali Empire in West Africa. And this is not because the period and the time make us feel that we are children, or make us feel that we are not autonomous enough to do big things, that we are not. I think this time shows us that we cannot really rely on institutions. We need to manage a certain part of our life. And I just want to invite everybody to think deeply about that aspect and that responsibility. And I love the hashtag of Rihanna. I'm going to write you outside to ask you, how can I use that also for some things? Take responsibility. I think this is the time to take responsibility, first for ourselves and then for others. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sobel. Over to you, Jessica.
We do not have enough time for this conversation. We could do this forever and ever, but I'm so grateful that the African Union and Generation Unlimited has allowed this platform. Creativity is going to get us out of this. Adjusting ourselves going to get us out of this. Partnering together. When we go through it alone, we won't make it. But I think when we come together and realize exactly what Sobel said, that young people have the capacity, the means, the energy, and the creativity to make anything possible. So take some time, think where you are, remember some of the things that we've said today, and surprise yourself and surprise your community as well, because I believe giving is who we are as young people, and we are definitely going to get through this in due time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Rihanna, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And just to ride on everything that everyone has said before, it's really simple. Well, it looks simple. It's this really small way. So I just want to tell everyone to get involved and take responsibility. You can do the work and do all the things that you need to do as a person, but also pass this on to someone else. And in the end, that collective effort is what take responsibility is about. This, what we did, started as 2 or 3 of us thinking, what exactly is going wrong with our people? And we have done, for us, it's not really about the recognition, it's just knowing that there is impact, there is work that we can do. And it's just really volunteering time, ideas, and a few resources just to get this done. And it has been very rewarding just in terms of that fulfillment, to know that we did not sit back and watch. We at least lended our voice and our time to something that is so huge that requires all of us to work together to solve. So thank you very much for this platform, and I'm excited, and I hope that everyone takes responsibility and gets involved and continue to power through till we solve this very huge crisis. Thank you.
Thank you so much, African Youth for Africa. So I'm going to bring in Amanda for closing remarks, and also just to say, I apologize for the questions that were not answered, but we'll be sharing the social media handles where you can go and get more responses to the questions that you have. So Amanda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you to our amazing panelists, young people who are on the ground doing excellent work. My takeaway from all of this is that we have all the creativity, all the drive, everything we need as young people. And this is a recurring theme across our webinars. And I want to also reinforce Rihanna's clarion call. Let's get involved. Let's take responsibility as young people, and let's take ownership and let's be at the forefront. Thank you so much to everyone who has come to this webinar. Thank you for always joining us. We're going to continue the conversation as usual on social media at AU Youth Program at _Generation Unlimited. We're also going to be sharing the social media handles of the panelists on our social media, and we're going to get it from them and make sure we're able to link you with them. And if the panelists can also type their handles as well in the chat, that would also be helpful too. The handles are already in the chat. So you can engage them on social media, continue asking your questions. We can't wait to see you next week. Next week, we continue with our regular programming on our webinars. We have our next collaboration with GenU in a couple of weeks as well. And we can't wait to see you guys. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks to all our panelists. Thanks to everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, bye.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye, everyone.